Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Delaware County. All are welcome here, whether in person or online. We're doing something a little bit unique this morning. The General Assembly of the Unitarian Universalist Association took place the week before last in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, culminating with a huge worship service last Sunday. And I'm going to be sharing part of that worship service with you this morning.
Good morning, Unitarian Universalists, and all who are gathered here in person on the banks of the Allegheny River in Pittsburgh, those who may be live streaming from across the continent and even the world, as well as those who may be viewing this service later on demand. We are delighted that you have chosen to be together in community this morning with one another and with us.
Here at General Assembly this year, we have committed to a practice of visual accessibility introductions, letting everyone, however they might access our service, have the information they need in order to know who is before them in this time together to that end. I am Reverend Nancy McDonald-Ladd, a 40-something white female identifying brunette with she/her pronouns, wearing a beige and black look that complements Manisha's without being matchy-matchy. Because yes, we planned it that way.
And I'm the Reverend Manish Mishra Marzetti. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am brown-skinned Indian American, middle-aged Gen Xer, wearing a traditional Indian South Asian formal wear.
We are a community willing to create new ways of being in the most challenging of times, able to build teams that are so much greater than any one of us alone, celebrating where we've come from and believing in the possibilities of what yet shall be.
My name is Marilyn Huff, and I am a 50-something white woman with graying, longish, dark blonde hair. I'm wearing bluish glasses with a white shirt with black pinstripes. I serve this church on the AV team and as vice president of the board. I prefer she, her pronouns. Along with 6 other members of UUCDC, I attended General Assembly the week before last as a delegate representing this congregation, and there were 11 other people from this congregation also in attendance at General Assembly, either as a delegate or just as a participant. Okay. So now we're going to start with our opening hymn. And our opening hymn is I Am Willing by Holly Near.
I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us, so lift me up to the light. and there is sorrow in my town. There is a panic all across the nation, and there is wailing the whole world round. But I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us, so lift me up to the light of change. May the children see more clearly, and may the elders be more wise. May the winds of change caress us, even though they burn our eyes. But I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us, so lift me up to the light of change. Give me a mind, Lord, to hold my confusion, and give me a desert to hold my fears. Give me a sunset to hold my wonder, and give me an ocean to hold my tears. But I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us, so lift me up to the light of
Good morning. I'm Janice Marie Johnson. Ooh. All right. I am a dark-skinned elder, a woman of African descent from the Caribbean. I have a short gray fro. I use she and her pronouns. It is my deep privilege to invite Manisha's family, Jeff, Jason, and Mina Mishra Marzetti, to physically light our chalice this morning. As they have joined me and are prepared to do so, we invite online attendees to light your personal chalice, if you have one, as we light our communal chalice here in Pittsburgh. Today, as we light our chalice, a symbol of Unitarian Universalism, we kindle a living flame whose light guides us. All that is holy, all that is greater than any one of us. In kindling this flame, we choose to honor family, leadership, and community. We are attuned to the fact that family encompasses all that truly is our lives. We reflect on the beauty, strength, and promise of the generations, of our intrinsic connection to ancestors, those who are living and those yet to come. We celebrate family in its many forms and imaginings, including the family that is our larger Unitarian Universalist community. In recognizing the challenging times that we live in, we offer our love and commitment to fierce, thoughtful, and sacred leadership. Leadership that can guide us through uncertainty. May the flame of our chalice remind us to hold each other in care, to hold each other in power, and to hold each other in love. Guided by that flame, may we be ever willing to thrive in the growing circle of creativity, to thrive in the growing circle of justice, and to thrive in the growing circle of community. And may it always be so.
Gathering at Three Rivers, the confluence of many currents, here we are today. The past few years for us Unitarian Universalists, and truly for all of us of whatever background and identities, have been challenging to say the least. We have navigated health-related uncertainties. We have witnessed the health of this nation also at risk at the hands of demagogues. We have witnessed war and genocide and climate-induced hurricanes, floods, and fires here in the United States. Economic uncertainty in these times has become a steadfast friend. First, the danger of a lockdown-induced recession, and then the risk of spiraling inflation. And if the state of our wider world weren't enough to make us anxious, the day-to-day realities in our local congregations might be making us so. Several years into this pandemic, some professional staff and lay leaders are feeling exhaustion from the nonstop pace of reinventing what congregational life needs to look like. Some religious professionals have retired and left their calling. Others have been pushed out as the strife and discord of the wider world have found at times expression amongst us. Some religious education programs have lost kids and teens. Some of our adult congregants have died or relocated to new cities and towns, or simply discovered over the course of the pandemic that they desire a different weekend routine. In parallel, high inflation has meant that what was previously affordable in our Unitarian Universalist communities might no longer be. We are living in a world that is vastly different from the one we knew just a few years ago. A world that has required change and adjustment for many of our Unitarian Universalist congregations. In faithful service to all that this new and different time needs, we Unitarian Universalists are learning to live with anxiety, at times, maybe even fear, that the continuing presence of uncertainty and change can evoke. I now invite us to take a moment and hold in our hearts what the changes and uncertainties of the past few years have meant for you personally, for each of us. Would you join me in that? Whatever today or tomorrow may bring, may we draw on the strength of our Unitarian Universalist faith to hold us and guide us.
So at GA, there was an offering for a Pittsburgh-based nonprofit serving the LGBTQIA community. Our congregation is entirely self-governed and financially supported by the voluntary generosity of our members and friends. To this end, we have an offering to sustain the work of this beloved community. In lieu of music, I'm going to use this time to share a bit of the business from General Assembly, and there will be more information in the coming weeks. The proposed changes to Article 2 of the bylaws passed with some amendments. The bylaws are the legal documents to which the UUA must abide. Article 2 defines the inspiration for what it means to be a Unitarian Universalist, the 7 principles of Unitarian Universalism, and the sources. These are printed in the front cover of the hymnal, a couple of pages before the hymns begin. There has been an effort over the past several years to add an 8th principle, and that 8th principle reads, journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by the actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. In fact, this congregation added that principle over a year ago. This principle was in the process of being added to the UUA bylaws when the decision was made to revisit the whole statement. If you feel strongly about this topic, I encourage you to seek out one of the delegates or explore the information that's posted on the UUA website. And you can also access that information following this QR code. While the proposed changes to Article 2 passed, the bylaws have not yet changed. The process of changing the bylaws is long, and we are now beginning the 2nd year of the process. There will be more amendments before the final vote at General Assembly next summer. We also passed 3 actions of immediate witness, or AIWs, at General Assembly. An action of immediate witness is a statement about a significant action, event, or development in the world that necessitates immediate engagement and action among UU member congregations and groups. UUs continue to support DACA, the Dreamers. UUs continue to fight for health equity with additional focus on abortion rights, gender-affirming care, and the impacts of systemic racism. The one folks are a little bit less familiar with is Rise Up to Stop Cop City. There is a training facility being planned outside of Atlanta, Georgia, called Cop City. And UUs oppose the building of this facility because it furthers the militarization of the police, and it would also result in severe deforestation of the area. And unfortunately, many folks who have been protesting the building of Cop City have been treated harshly by law enforcement. And now we will carry on with the service.
An excerpt from Mental Fight by Ben Okri. Might we choose to make this time a waking up event, a moment of world empowerment, to pledge in private to be more aware, more playful, more tolerant, and more fair, more responsible, more wild, more loving, awake to our unsuspected powers, more amazing. We rise or fall by the choices we make. It all depends on the road we take. And the choice and the road each depend on the light that we have, the light that we bend, on the light that we use.
Oh, my heart longs to know, how do any of us stay willing? How do we stay true to what we know, to what we value, and our commitment to be the people our wider world needs? The call to stay ready and willing to tackle whatever challenges may arise is such an essential quality for us as people of faith. And yet, that call often runs up against unexpected obstacles and losses. We can feel like we're on a road, on a journey, and we're no longer even sure where we're going. 15 years ago, I was much newer in my career as a Unitarian Universalist minister. And I'd just been in a congregational search process that had not gone my way. Smitten with the congregation I was in dialogue with, I was convinced that this ministry was exactly right for me. However, I was not the candidate the congregation ultimately selected and called as their minister. I was devastated. What I thought was going to happen, what I believed was exactly right for me, exactly what I needed, didn't happen. I was shaken by this loss. I did not feel ready and willing for whatever was going to come next. And yet, Holly Near reminds us, to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who have gone before us, so lift me up to the light of change. I knew that I needed to find my way back to open-heartedness, to a willingness to meet what life was giving me. I decided to go on a personal retreat so I could process my experience. The desert is a deeply spiritual and healing space for me, and southern Utah is a place that I have gone to again and again for such grounding and healing. There, I did this very Hindu thing that I wasn't even consciously aware I was doing. In traditional Hinduism, when personal needs are great, we often go to remote temples, ones that are often situated at the top of a mountain, for example. Such spiritual pilgrimages can include an arduous journey to the summit, to the temple, where we then pour our hearts out in anguish and prayer. Something about the physical journey itself allows for catharsis. At Zion National Park, I found the steepest, hardest climb, in this case, up the side of a plateau, and I began climbing it. The journey up that plateau that day was challenging, one of the hardest hikes I've done. But something in me knew I needed to do this, and so I pushed myself to reach the top. Once there, I was completely alone. I sat down, exhausted, and I wept. The grief wailed out of me, with only the red rock cliffs to witness and receive my pain. I cried out my disappointment. I cried for the loss of possibility, of a possible future. Just as those tears started to settle, a new round of grief seized me. Something deeper still was lurking. This pain was even greater. Underneath the ego bruising of not getting the job I wanted, I just felt so lonely. I hadn't even been aware of how lonely I was. But this deeper pain began to surface. I became conscious of it, and as I did, I began to pray through my tears. Okay, universe, so there's more learning and growing I need to do. I get that, but amidst all this hard stuff I need to figure out, is it too much to hope for companionship? Is it too much to hope for closeness and intimacy, for the love of someone who could support me on this journey? Offered in solitude to all of nature, to the sky, to the red rocks, to the earth, the prayer I didn't even know I was holding just emerged. Amidst all that was hard, all that was challenging, amidst loss and disappointment, I didn't really need the job that wasn't mine to have. What I needed to stay open and willing, as Holly Near invites us, was love and support. Similar to my experience, the pandemic has pushed us all into experiences of things that were supposed to be and were not, or are not. In that there is grief and loss. Some of our Unitarian Universalist congregations are also experiencing pandemic-era losses and changes, losses in membership, losses in the attendance of children and teens, budgetary uncertainty, staffing cuts, and reconfigurations. If your congregation has been navigating currents such as these, you are not alone. You are not alone. How do we Unitarian Universalists remain open and willing to shine the light of our love, of our faith, in the midst of ongoing experiences of change, loss, and uncertainty? How do we do that as UUs? Our transcendentalist forebear, Theodore Parker, offers us this wisdom in a sermon from 1841, The Transient and Permanent in Christianity. Quote, "If we look carelessly on the ages that have gone by, or only on the surface of things, there is reason to fear. For we confound, we confuse, the truth with the word of man. So at a distance the cloud and the mountain seem the same." How do we distinguish between the wispy cloud, fleeting and ephemeral, and the heft and solidity of a mountain that can hold us and anchor us? On top of that desert plateau, the deeper thing that my heart ached for was love and support. Isn't this what we Unitarian Universalists are all about? Caring, which is love, which is the impulse behind all the justice and equity work that we do, and support, which we bring alive through relationship, through community. These are essential Unitarian Universalist commitments, UU values that have grounded us and guided us for centuries longer than our relatively newer statement of UU principles. Our UU history illustrates these values. When our intellectual forebearer, Spaniard Michael Servetus, was burned at the stake in Geneva for heresy in 1553, he died because he cared about freedom of conscience within community. He could have privately believed whatever he wanted to believe, yet he died because some part of him longed to have his unique and independent thinking honored by others in community. When Transylvanian Unitarian minister Francis David helped articulate the first Western Edict of Religious Tolerance in 1568, it was the impulse of love brought alive, a desire to nurture mutuality, relationship, and acceptance across difference. When Henry David Thoreau sat in jail in Concord, Massachusetts in 1846 for refusing to pay taxes to a government that legitimized slavery and war, it was a love of our shared humanity that fueled his longing for equity and peace. 19th century Unitarian suffragist Susan B. Anthony marched, organized, and politic because she valued gender equality, and an expression of that was the right for women to vote in the United States. And in the early 20th century, Unitarian Frances Ellen Watkins Harper helped co-found the NAACP as an institutional expression of a value that remains core to us as Unitarian Universalists through this day, the value of racial equity. This anchoring in deep, heartfelt values and anchoring in love and community remains our Unitarian Universalist calling card. It is the ground of being from which we have been contemporary national leaders in justice-seeking movements such as those supporting reproductive justice, marriage equality, migrant rights, and trans equality, to name just a few. Reflected in these commitments are our passion for, our collective commitment to the dignity and unique experience of every person, people who are already among us, people who are dear to us, people who we know in community. All we have to do is look at our shared history over centuries as Unitarians, as Universalists, as Unitarian Universalists. We were not waiting on the sidelines for someone to invent a statement of UU principles in the 1960s. Drawing on our core values, we UUs have engaged with the arc of history for as long as we have existed. It is an arc not just of history, but one of forging, one of creating, one of building the history our hearts and souls have longed for. Pauline invites us to honor those who have gone before us, our UU forebears. We honor them by honoring the values that their lives illumined. For not doing so, to be adrift or lost amidst the needs of the world, to be hopeless would be so strange. Our reading this morning by Nigerian poet Ben Okri also invites us to ponder whether the time we are in might be a waking up event, a waking up to who we really are, to the light, to the fire, the flame within us. That light, that flame is given life week after week in our Unitarian Universalist congregations. This is where our values are made tangible at the local level, in community. I have one last story to share about a former congregant of mine. Her name is Debbie. I'm sharing her story, our story, with her permission. Over a decade ago, Debbie attended a Unitarian Universalist congregation for the very first time. Sunday services in that community included a time during which congregants could share their joys and sorrows, a brief sharing of personal celebrations or hardships in front of the community. Debbie chose that Sunday to publicly share with a room full of strangers that she had lost her job, that she had a special needs teenage daughter, and that she was on the verge of homelessness. With tears in her eyes, she told us that she had turned to every resource and local agency that she could think of, and while help was coming, she didn't know where lunch or dinner were going to come from later that day. As she wept and sat back down, she asked the community to hold her and her daughter in their hearts. To be hopeless would seem so strange. Yet how does one stay open and willing when you don't know where your next meal is coming from? Following the Sunday service, Debbie stayed for the congregation's coffee hour. I watched from a distance as congregant after congregant came up to her, offered her kindness, moral support, and in some cases, money. Over and over again, community members made sure Debbie and her daughter had what they needed for that day and for the days ahead. I could see how moved Debbie was by this, these spontaneous expressions of love, caring, and generosity left me feeling so proud to be a Unitarian Universalist minister that day. I followed up with Debbie in the week ahead and was able to offer financial support more officially from the congregation's ministerial discretionary fund. And what happened next was a beautiful thing to behold. In the months and in the years that followed, Debbie and her daughter joined that Unitarian Universalist community. Her daughter became a volunteer in the congregation's nursery, taking care of the community's babies and toddlers. Debbie found a job and enrolled in an academic program to become a clinical psychologist, a goal which she achieved. She specialized in supporting the mental health of gay, lesbian, bi, queer, and trans people. Debbie went on to establish her own independent clinical practice, and that practice has now become a training site for future clinical psychologists. In a recent conversation, Debbie shared with me that on that fateful Sunday, the first time she was ever in one of our communities, she says, quote, "Unitarian Universalism saved my life." And truly, it's done more than that. It has empowered Debbie in returning the care and support that was offered to her back out to the world many times over. We never really truly know what the future holds, do we? But we can allow the anxiety that accompanies uncertainty to be a catalyst, to be a waking up event, an event in which we remember and ground ourselves in who we truly are, in what our deepest commitments are. We are a people devoted to religious liberty, to justice, equity, and individual and collective healing and growth. We are a people of courage. We Unitarian Universalists are a people who have always been open and willing to rise up and meet the needs of the times we are in. For to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who have gone before us. And so we lift ourselves up to the light of change. The world may buffet us with uncertainty, yes, with pandemics, climate devastation, civic and social strife, and on the list is long, and we know it. Yet grounded in the strength of our bonds with one another, there are no challenges, no obstacles that will keep us from shining our Unitarian Universalist flame, the light of our love, from the highest mountains, announcing to all that we are here, waiting to welcome others, you who may need us, you who may be longing for us, you who may never even have heard of us before today. Our love for one another and for the wider world is the beacon that has always guided this band of beloveds in the mighty and improbable work of bending the very arc of history. Remember how often we as a movement have succeeded in doing just that. Don't forget who you are. Don't forget who we are collectively. Trust the goodness, the light inside you. That is how we become the people our world needs us to be. We are open, we are willing. May it always
Don't forget who we are. Who we are together in response to this good word and to every single beautiful and complex thing we have shared so far this week. And in this hour, I want to invite you to take a good seat for one more minute for a question or two worth posing and a time of reflection and response. If indeed we are to join among the people that this world needs, what is it we must actually be open to? What is it that we together must be willing to help create? Even in the crowded company of our greatest fears, open and willing to create hope where there was no hope before, amid the kindness of strangers and the care of our community. Through the winds that blow, shifting the sand beneath us that we mistook too often for solid ground, open and willing to be changed. held by a tradition whose greater purpose remains undimmed, gifted with the wisdom that arises in the dark of night, open and willing to carry forward the work of progressive faith for the generations stretching out before us, accompanied by each other, yes, even when it is hard, accompanied by these friends and these collaborators across the tradition that is ours to share, open and willing to make space for each other with graciousness and with goodwill. What are you, like you and you and you and you, open and willing to embrace, not just in this convention center or this worship service, but in the stretching span of your life of service? I invite you to think on that question, like really, right now. What new and aspirational thing are you open and willing to embrace in your life? I am not here to boss you around and tell you what that thing should be, but I am here to tell you, though it is not my business exactly what you commit to, you are called to be braver and more open. There is something in your soul right now waiting for a renewed commitment only you can make. Turn it over in your heart for a moment. Hold it, this thing that is worth saying yes to. And when I raise my hands up in just a moment, I want to invite us to say together, here in this space and right where you are at home, to say together simply this: I am open and I am willing. Loudly or quietly, or in the silent sanctuary of your heart, let's say it together one time. I am open and I am willing. Amen. 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 Amen.
May I invite you to rise in body or spirit as you're comfortably able and willing. Oh, beloveds, those of us gathered here in Pittsburgh, take just a moment and gaze around this space that we have sanctified and made our own. This circle of beloveds that help bring alive the flame of Unitarian Universalism day in, day out. Those of you online and around the world, you are part of this circle and held in that love and in that flame deeply and well. We know the future holds more uncertainties than our hearts can at times bear. And yet we also know we can trust the depth and resilience of this circle. Its grounding in love, its courage, the proven fact that we have been ones to help shape and bend the arc of history in service to that love, in service to justice and inclusion and compassion. This is who we are. Go forth as you prepare to go forth from this General Assembly. Go forth knowing that wherever you may reside, keep bringing that flame alive deeply and well. And they are literally hundreds of thousands of Unitarian Universalists cheering you on as you do that. None of us is alone. We have each other. May it always be so. Blessed be. Go in love. Amen.